I believe that certain players should get a second chance, and this is why I think that Torey Krug deserves a second chance. This is all coming up on Locked On Blues.
You're Locked On Blues, your daily podcast on the St. Louis Blues. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Blues your first listen every single day. I'm Haley Taylor Simon, your host of Locked On Blues, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Today, I want to talk about which players deserve a second chance. I also want to talk about the fact that today is actually Brett Hull's birthday, and Kevin Hayes had his wedding over this past weekend. Finally, I'm going to talk about the Blues History Minute on this day. This is a fun little summer segment where I get to take you back on memory lane, and it's a lot of fun, and I do enjoy that segment. Before I jump into why I believe that certain players deserve a second chance, I want to tell you really fast that this episode is brought to you by Birddogs. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL or enter promo code Locked On NHL for a free white tech hat with your order. You won't want to take your Birddogs off, we promise you. So let's go talk about second chances and why I believe that they're actually really important. So in the NHL, obviously statistics are everything. And one problem that I have when it comes to statistics, when it comes to just how we view players, I feel like we don't view them as people, we view them more as numbers. So let's break down this. Torey obviously is a player that was talked a lot about. And this is a player, a defender. So let's go take away the fact that while he did have 7 goals and 25 assists, that does not mean, I don't want to say it doesn't mean anything, but it's not the most important thing. Torey is somebody that is not the best goal scorer. The most goals that he's ever scored in a single season is tied. It's not tied. Let me backtrack. He had an incredible season 2017, 2018 with Boston, where he had 14 goals and 45 assists. He is huge when it comes to the assists. This season, he had 25 assists. Last season, so I'm talking about like this season and last season, he had 34. So he is strong when it does come to the assists. I think what upset a lot of people were, and I speak for every single person, right? But I'm speaking for some of the things that I thought of, some of the things that I've noticed, that this wasn't his best season defensively. He is a defender. So I don't want to take all his points and break it down in that sense. But the 3 seasons that he has been as St. Louis Blue, he had 2 goals in that 2020 season. Again, that was a really weird season with COVID. So I don't want to say that that's an excuse, but that is the reality. Then he went from having 9 goals last season, and then this past season he had 7. But again, he was consistent that within the past 2 seasons, so not this current past season, but the 21 and then the 2020, he did have over 30 assists. So while the assists could be higher, he had 9 less this season than he did last season, and he had 2 less goals this season than he did last season. I do believe that he is still a valuable player. He is somebody that, he accumulates some penalty minutes. He accumulated 49 penalty minutes this past season, which I'm not a huge fan of, right? That's a lot of time, but at the end of the day, he is still a player that is beyond valuable on the ice. This was actually the most penalty minutes he has ever acquired in his whole entire NHL career, starting off in 2011, 2012. So definitely a little bit of I don't want to say of a jump, but that is the reality. And it's funny because I feel like with me, I am especially more hard on the defense than anything. And I know what you're thinking, Haley, be nice. And I am nice. I just expect so much out of these guys. And I just want them to be super successful. And then we look at a guy like Hal Rosen, who had 11 goals and 19 assists in only 20 penalty minutes, which is obviously better than how Torey was. And I feel like Rosen played some pretty good defense. So I am saying this. There was a lot of theatrics surrounding Torey Krug in this offseason with a potential trade, with, using his no trade clause, which I do want to remind you is his right, not only legally, but just his right in general. You don't have to go to a team that you don't want to play for when you've earned that. He's 32 years old. I think that this season, giving a second chance, having open arms. Listen, is his contract a little insane? Absolutely. You can agree on that. I can agree on that. But at the end of the day, that has nothing at all to do with how he's playing. That has nothing to do with how I view him, how you view him. I think it's one of those things where that is a problem with Army. That is a problem with management. I'm trying to explain this as best as I can. It's one of those things where that shouldn't matter for a fan base. I mean, it should matter as a fan. Like, obviously it matters, okay? But what I'm getting at is that I don't care about contracts right now. I mean, I do, but just hear me out. Like, just speaking in general. What I care about right now is winning. What I care about right now is being a successful team and dominating the Central. What I care about right now isn't Torey Krug's contract. It's how will Torey Krug play this season, and if they can move him and get someone valuable in return, and release him that cap space. Obviously, I would be happy. But in case that does not happen, I cannot hold that against Torey Krug because he upheld his legally binding contract. And I think that in the National Hockey League, there's been a lot of focus on the young guys, which I completely get. You go to the NHL's Instagram, and it's a lot of Trevor Zegras, it's a lot of Jack Hughes, it's a lot of the younger guys. And I think that what is important is that the NHL needs to recognize, and before it's too late, before some of these guys retire, that some of the older guys in the league are still valuable and they still withhold value. I get it. They're trying to go after a certain audience with the guys that they're posting. And I get that. Be strategic. I'm strategic, not really, but be strategic. But it's one of those things where you have players that still have that value, but then a casual fan wouldn't even recognize that because all they're going to see is that they're in their 30s. And it's like, oh, why would we even want to deal with that guy on the team when there's guys like Jack Hughes or Trevor Zegras? Because Zegras is somebody that's being talked about a lot. Meanwhile, look at the Ducks. That wasn't shade. I'm just saying that it's interesting who the NHL is promoting and not promoting. And I still feel like they're being completely biased towards certain players and certain teams. And I'm not saying that St. Louis should get all the recognition, but on Paducah, that puzzle that I talked to you all about, I saw again, St. Louis was on there again today because whoever is running that account, by the way, they follow me, so shout out to them. They are biased towards St. Louis, which I'm fine. I love that because I feel like there are certain teams that don't get enough love. It's funny, even when the Vegas Golden Knights, and then I'll move on to the next thing, but really fast. when the Vegas Golden Knights became a new team in the franchise, when they became a new franchise, oh my gosh, in the NHL, they had all this love, recognition, and then when the Kraken came along, I felt like there was just nothing. So it's interesting to see how certain teams are treated versus not treated. That's not shade, by the way, because I could care less. I really could care less about the social media aspect of it all. I just obviously I find it a little bit busy. I mean, busy, a little bit interesting. So I want to tell you about Birddogs. Birddogs make you look good. Birddogs are stretch khaki shorts, and they're designed to make your legs look slimmer and give you that truly sculptured look. Birddogs are awesome. They're super comfortable. That is one thing about them. And their anti-stink sweat fabric keeps you cool and dry all day long. So if you feel yourself getting hot, Birddogs are the best short pant for you because they're truly just designed to make you feel comfortable. So go to birddogs.com/lockedonnhl or enter promo code LOCKEDONNHL for a free white tech hat with your order. That's birddogs.com/lockedonnhl or a promo code LOCKEDONNHL for a free white tech hat. You won't want to take your Birddogs off. We promise you. All right. Brett Hull's birthday is, I was going to say was today. It is still today. So Brett Hull's birthday is today. What a legend. I just want to say, what an absolute legend. On at Locked On Blues, I even tweeted, I said, it is the legend's birthday today. And that is because I truly feel like this guy is one of a kind. He scored over 500 goals and 900 points for the St. Louis Blues. And it is insane how much of an impact he has made. Every single person in St. Louis loves Brett. And he is 59 today. Doesn't look a day over 50. Come on now, Brett. But when you have somebody that is so loved from the fan base, when it is somebody that is so extraordinary, obviously you want to give them credit. And, think about 94, think about all the things that he has done. And it gets me thinking, is there anybody on the St. Louis Blues currently that will have the same amount of respect that us fans have for Brett? And that's not a question that you need to answer right away. I am still thinking of that because there are some players that I think could be in that level, but with the amount of points, with the amount of games that he's played for St. Louis and the impact that he made on the team, it is so hard to compare that with today's current roster. And it's nothing against any of these guys. Brett just did something that not a lot of people could do. And it's just one of those things where you think about, the golden moment, right? There's just so many things. Oh man, I miss him. It sucks. It sucks when you have a guy that you just feel like is one of a kind, a guy that you just feel like shaped an organization. And I just want to give a little bit of I usually don't do like birthday shout outs because I feel like that's like kind of cheesy, but I did have to give one for Mr. Brett Hull because again, when you have somebody who is so legendary, when you have somebody that's made such an impact not only on the team, but the city of St. Louis and just the National Hockey League in general. I just wanted to give Brett a little bit of love here on Locked On Blues. And speaking of giving love, in the spirit of giving love, see that segue? That's how you do it, folks. Kevin Hayes, the new Blues center that was acquired from Philadelphia, just got married to his beautiful bride now, Kata. If I pronounce that wrong, I am sorry. There has been no videos or anything of this young woman's name out there, so I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And it looked like a beautiful wedding. It looked like they had 2 ceremonies. But I just love to give shout outs when there's different players that are hitting different milestones. Benner got married in the beginning of this off season, and I think talking about the Blues, sometimes I like to make these guys more than just who they are on the ice. And I hate to say it, but sometimes like weddings and marriage and happiness can result in better playing, or at least I hope so. So it is always important for me as your host of Locked On Blues to make sure that I do tell you guys about the happy moments in different players' lives, because it's summer right now. There's no hockey going on. And it's not a bad thing to have a little bit of LOVE. Why did I not know how to spell love? Into that. Speaking of something else, see how this segment actually, the shout outs. So there was a video that the Blues released that I'm going to talk about on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Blues, called The Anatomy of the Draft. And it is so cool. I've watched it already, and I planned it to be for Thursday's episode because I have a lot to dive into when it comes to draft stuff. But if you haven't watched that already and you want to get a better understanding of what tomorrow's episode will be on, make sure you watch. It's on YouTube. It's called The Anatomy of the Draft. So I just want to give you like a little, not like a homework assignment, because I will explain what it was. But if you want to understand tomorrow's episode just a little bit better, I do highly recommend watching The Anatomy of the Draft, so that way you can follow along with me just a bit better. Again, you don't have to. You can just listen to Locked On Blues or watch Locked On Blues on YouTube, and you will still get the same information that you will see in the video. But I do have to say that it is so well done, and I haven't seen any other teams do this in the NHL. So shout out again to the St. Louis Blues for being one of the first teams to give us a little bit of a background as to how the draft went down. Okay. So before I get into one of my favorite segments, because this segment to me always is so much fun. Right now, I just want to tell you, make sure you subscribe to Locked On Blues on YouTube, where you're going to see me, what is up. Just type in Locked On Blues. Or if you're watching, just hit that subscribe button. If you were listening on any streaming services, Spotify, Apple Music, thank you so much. Make sure you guys follow, like, subscribe. And then again, Twitter at Locked On Blues, or my personal Twitter, which is Haley T. Simon. All right. So there's been a couple days of no day in history. So that's why, as I said, I like to do my Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, because I feel like more information always comes out. So this is a throwback. And again, this is from STL Blues History on Twitter. I think that they have such great stuff. I also do some research on some other pages and just even my own research, but I thought this one was interesting. So this was the last page of the November 30th, 1963 issue of the Hockey News, and it has plenty of the future of the St. Louis Blues. Bob and Bark Plager, Emile Francis, Lynn Patrick, Don Oury, Bill McCurry, and of course, the St. Louis Blues. So it is so cool. Again, if you folks are on YouTube watching, I'm going to hold up my phone so you can see the little newspaper clipping. It is so cool. I like how it's like my last name in cigars or cigarettes. That's, really cool. I did not plan that. And then obviously today it's Brett Hull's 59th birthday, and that is what happened today on history. Now, another thing that was a little bit historic was Wayne Gretzky and a trade that led him to the LA Kings. Obviously, Gretzky did play for the St. Louis Blues for like 18 games. It was not a lot. He was a captain here in St. Louis, so that was special within its own, but it is August 9th. There is not much going on in the hockey world. Right now, it's the World Junior Cup or something like that going on. There's not much excitement. And I have to say, I'm a little bit bothered because I know in 1 month from now, in July, I said, get me to August. Now I'm in August. Get me to September. And I don't want to rush summer away. That is not what I'm getting at. That is not what I want. What I want is some St. Louis Blues hockey. And right now, I feel like I'm just making predictions for the season, driving myself crazy because I don't know how the season will go. It could go all right, it could go down the dumpster fire, or it could just be cruise control. I don't know. And there's no way to know until some training camp begins. But this gets me to my next point. No statement of a prediction is too crazy. And I know my everydayers know that I always ask you on Twitter. I have like little polls that I put up, or I ask you questions. And you don't always have to agree with me, and that is okay. A couple other people said Torey Krug today when I said about a player that you think deserves a second chance. You don't have to agree with that. You could say, Haley, he is fine. I think you're overreacting. Fine. But don't be afraid to let me know what you think, because we will debate it and you and I will have a conversation about it. I think that it is important, especially in the world of hockey, to keep the conversation going, because in hockey, it's funny. Your team, it could be really sucky one season, and then the next season you could be a cup contender. I know that sounds like kind of crazy, but there's not a lot of sports that have that. Football, it can take years to build up a team because there are so many positions, a lot to build around. In baseball, it's a small roster and guys sign big contracts, so sometimes that can be difficult. Basketball, again, it's a small roster, smaller roster. And it just seems with how the NBA is going now, there's just not much changing. But with hockey, essentially, while yes, the roster's small, yes, there are still contracts involved. It's one of those sports that has more fluidity. And I can't put it just into words of why I feel that way. I just feel like with hockey, it's one of those sports where anything can happen. And of course, with any sport, anything can happen. But right now, my focus is on the St. Louis Blues and how they're going to do this upcoming season. And I genuinely believe, as I'm looking at my St. Louis Blues poster of their Stanley Cup, I'm like staring it down right now. I'm like, I see you. I do believe that this team could potentially be a playoff contending team. I've broke down every single player on the team. I've talked about different cases and scenarios. And I can't fathom that this team won't show up next season. I really believe that they will. And you can call me crazy. You can call me Delulu, as the kids are saying. But what you will not call me is too out there, because there's nothing that's too out there. Now, if I said, okay, I think the St. Louis Blues are going to win the Stanley Cup, okay, yeah, you can then comment and be like, Haley, are you okay? Because I probably won't be okay. But I think by me saying I think this will be a playoff contending team, I don't think in any way that that's too out there whatsoever. So with all that being said, again, you have homework tonight, or you don't have to do homework. I don't like when people say that. But what I do like to hear people say is, let's go Blues.